The Seoul World Martial Arts Expo was a cauldron of raw energy, where the air thrummed with the intensity of disciplined fighters and the electric anticipation of a packed crowd. The arena, a massive dome lit by stark white lights, echoed with the sharp cracks of strikes, the rhythmic breathing of combatants, and the murmurs of thousands of spectators crammed into tiered seats. Martial artists from every corner of the world, karateka from Japan, Muay Thai practitioners from Thailand, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experts from Brazil, had converged to showcase their skills. But tonight, the spotlight wasn't on the scheduled bouts. It was on a moment that ignited like a spark in dry grass, a clash of pride, legacy, and unyielding resolve that would become legend. Jason Statham sat in the audience, blending into the crowd in a plain black hoodie, his face shadowed under a cap. At 57, he was a man carved from discipline, his lean, scarred body a testament to decades of training in kickboxing, Wing Chun, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He wasn't here as a celebrity but as a martial artist, a student forged in the fires of countless dojos. His presence was understated, but the crowd sensed it, their whispers rippling, "That's Jason Statham." He had come to honor his late mentor, Chris Christensen, a British martial artist and stunt coordinator who had shaped Jason's path with relentless rigor. Chris, gone 2 years now, was a quiet giant in the martial arts world, a man who blended practical combat with a deep respect for the art, training fighters with the same intensity he brought to every lesson. His name carried weight, and Jason carried it in his bones. The night's centerpiece was a demonstration by Master Jin-Kyu, a 48-year-old Taekwondo grandmaster revered in South Korea for his precision and power. A 7th-degree black belt, Jin-Kyu's kicks were the stuff of myth, spinning heel strikes that could snap boards like twigs and topple opponents with surgical accuracy. But his skill was matched by an arrogance that bordered on cruelty. Known for his sharp tongue and contempt for anything he deemed lesser than his art, Jin-Kyu thrived on provocation, dismissing modern mixed martial arts as a corruption of tradition. He stood in the center of the ring, his black dobok immaculate, his posture commanding, a microphone amplifying his voice as he addressed the crowd. Tonight, Jin-Kyu declared, his tone laced with a smirk, "We honor the purity of Taekwondo, untainted by the theatrics of pretenders." The crowd cheered, but his next words sliced through the noise like a blade. "I've seen so-called masters who disgrace this art, men like Chris Christensen, a fraud who played at fighting for fame, not honor. A stuntman, not a warrior. His students think they can walk in our world, but they're nothing but shadows of his failure." The arena went deathly quiet, the insult landing like a thunderclap. Chris Christensen's name was sacred to those who knew him, a man who had trained champions in gritty London gyms, who lived for the art, not the spotlight. To call him a fraud was to spit on his legacy and everyone he'd taught. In the audience, Jason's hands clenched, his knuckles white against the armrests. The crowd's eyes darted toward him, the air thick with tension. He could have stayed seated, let the moment pass. But Chris had been more than a teacher, he'd been the man who saw a scrappy kid from Shirebrook and taught him to channel his fire into something greater. Jason stood, his movements slow but deliberate, and the crowd's murmurs turned to gasps. The spotlight found him as he walked down the aisle, his steps heavy with purpose, his face a mask of controlled rage. This wasn't the Jason of red carpets or staged fights. This was a man carrying his mentor's honor like a shield. He climbed into the ring, uninvited but undeniable, and faced Jin-Kyu. The grandmaster's smirk wavered, a flicker of unease in his eyes. Jason didn't reach for the microphone. His voice, low and gravelly, cut through the silence. "You don't know a damn thing about Chris Christensen," he said. "He was more martial artist than you'll ever be, and he didn't need to tear others down to prove it. You want to talk frauds? Step up and say it to my face." The challenge crackled like lightning. The crowd roared, a primal surge of excitement, some cheering for Jason, others for Jin-Kyu. The grandmaster's face hardened, his voice dripping with scorn. "You're no fighter," he sneered. "You're a student of a nobody. This is my ring." Jason's eyes didn't waver. Then let's settle it, he said. For Chris. Right here, right now. The arena erupted, the noise deafening. The organizers, caught off guard, scrambled to contain the moment, but the referee, a weathered martial arts veteran, saw its weight. He stepped in, proposing an exhibition spar, 3 minutes, light contact, no knockouts, just skill. Jin-Kyu nodded, his smirk returning, confident in his dominance. Jason cracked his neck, his gaze steady, and stepped back. The bell rang, and the world narrowed to the two men in the ring. Jin-Kyu moved like liquid fire, his Taekwondo stance low and fluid, his feet barely touching the mat. He opened with a feint, a quick jab to test Jason's reflexes, then unleashed a spinning crescent kick aimed at Jason's head. The crowd gasped as Jason ducked, his kickboxing instincts sharp, his body coiled like a spring. He countered with a low kick to Jin-Kyu's calf, but the grandmaster was already gone, spinning into a side kick that grazed Jason's ribs. The speed was blistering, Jin-Kyu's legs like whips, each strike a testament to decades of mastery. Jason felt the sting, his jaw tightening. Jin-Kyu's kicks came in waves, high roundhouses, spinning back kicks, each one precise and relentless. One caught Jason in the chest, forcing him back a step, the crowd roaring. For a moment, it seemed Jin-Kyu's arrogance was justified, the grandmaster was untouchable, his Taekwondo a wall Jason couldn't breach. Whispers of defeat rippled through the stands. But Jason wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for Chris, for every grueling lesson in sweaty gyms, for every time Chris had said, "Get up, Jay. Fight smarter." He'd been knocked down before, in street scraps, on diving boards, in life. This was no different. He shifted his approach, drawing on his Wing Chun training to close the distance, his hands moving like pistons to trap Jin-Kyu's kicks. Taekwondo thrived at range, but Jason's strength was in close quarters. He slipped under a high kick, grabbing Jin-Kyu's leg mid-motion and twisting it, throwing the grandmaster off balance. In that split second, Jason landed a sharp jab to Jin-Kyu's shoulder, then a low kick to his thigh, each strike controlled but deliberate. The crowd surged, sensing the tide turning. Jin-Kyu, rattled, responded with a jumping spin kick, a move so audacious it seemed to defy gravity. But Jason was ready. He sidestepped, using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to pull Jin-Kyu into a clinch, his knee grazing the grandmaster's midsection. The referee nodded, a point for Jason. The final minute was a masterclass in adaptation. Jin-Kyu's kicks were still lethal, but Jason's footwork, honed by years of kickboxing, let him dance around the strikes, his hands redirecting Jin-Kyu's momentum with Wing Chun precision. He landed a clean hook to Jin-Kyu's side, then a sweeping kick that nearly toppled the grandmaster. Jin-Kyu fought back, his pride fueling a flurry of kicks, but Jason's resolve was iron. He absorbed a glancing blow to his shoulder, then countered with a combination. A jab, a low kick, and a final elbow strike that caught Jin-Kyu off guard, earning a gasp from the crowd. When the bell rang, the referee raised Jason's hand. The score was close, but Jason's adaptability and heart had edged out Jin-Kyu's technical brilliance. The arena exploded, not just for the victory but for what it meant. Jin-Kyu stood, his face a mix of shock and grudging respect, his arrogance cracked. Jason, breathing hard, didn't gloat. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Chris Christensen was no fraud," he said, the microphones catching every word. "He taught me that martial arts is about discipline, respect, and heart, not tearing others down to feel big. You mocked a man who lived for this art, and I hope you learned something today." He paused, his eyes locked on Jin-Kyu. "This wasn't about me. It was about him." The crowd roared, a wave of admiration washing over the arena. Jin-Kyu's smirk was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped nod. He bowed, deeper than before, a silent acknowledgement of his misstep. Jason returned the bow, not out of triumph but out of the code Chris had drilled into him, respect your opponent, win or lose. The grandmaster's arrogance had been humbled, not by humiliation but by a display of skill and conviction that left no room for doubt. As Jason left the ring, the crowd still buzzing, a young fighter approached him backstage, clutching a worn Taekwondo belt. "You could have mocked him back," the boy said. "Why didn't you?" Jason wiped sweat from his brow, his smile tired but genuine. "Because that's not what Chris taught me," he said. "You don't win by breaking someone else. You win by showing them what's real: heart, skill, and honor. That's the lesson that lasts." The story of that night spread like wildfire, carried by shaky phone videos and hushed conversations in dojos. It wasn't just about Jason Statham defeating a Taekwondo grandmaster. It was about a man who fought for his mentor's legacy, who turned an insult into a lesson, proving that true victory lies in standing for something greater than yourself. For the crowd, it was a reminder that martial arts is as much about character as it is about skill. For Jin-Kyu, it was a mirror to his own flaws. And for Jason, it was a vow fulfilled, to honor Chris Christensen, not just with a win, but with a lesson that echoed far beyond the ring.